Welcome back to Bitter Balcony, episode 2 of our podcast.
Yes, I'm John. That's Jazz over there, 3,000 miles away. You're both hitting, two different coasts.
Coast to coast. Like Space Ghost.
Exactly. Yeah, okay. Okay, we just started off on the right foot.
Okay.
In about like the fifth take, but okay. I think this is the Getting to Know You episode, and as you can see, maybe you don't want to know us after what we just done we've killed the idea of podcasting for like about anybody that actually does this for a living. But we'll go ahead and try to improve the situation with my broken English. So
the whole purpose of the episode is that we want to talk to you, our audience, and let you know how we got into film and a brief history of what we know about film, so that you can...
Very brief history.
Very brief.
What we know about film. Very brief.
So that you can know why you should or shouldn't listen to us.
Yeah, hopefully, if we continue this, we'll probably shouldn't.
Yeah, no, after this podcast, people are going to be like, oh, dude, these guys, fuck these guys.
I wouldn't blame them.
Fuck these guys, but I'd
especially
love
with
to have a drink with them.
Yeah, they'll probably be drinking after listening to this, so...
So, John, tell us about how you got into film and your film non-history. I don't know. I don't even know how to title that thing.
How I got into film?
How you got into film?
To be honest, man, I'm a child of the 80s, dude. I love, I think one of my first impressions as a kid was when my dad bought a VHS to the house. And I think one of the first movies I remember renting was Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. And... it was such an awesome... I was just impressed as a kid that I can pop this cassette into this machine and all of a sudden I'm watching this great film and whatnot. And the idea that there was more cassettes available even lured me more into what cinema was all about. Mind you, at this point in my life, I'm just enjoying films for for their face value. You know what I mean? All the action, all the craziness and whatnot. And I guess it wasn't until I was about 16 where when I saw Pulp Fiction for the first time that I think that changed my opinion about film as something that I loved as entertainment to something that I could see as a possibility for a career. I don't think there's ever been a film in my lifetime that just changed the way I looked at film. It was daring. It was different. I remember leaving the movie theater not really sure what I had witnessed. Kind of was a shock to the system, really, I had to really, process it, and it wasn't until you actually, get outside the experience and think about it, you go, wow, that made me want to make film, that made me want to be creative, and actually started getting me into writing, started getting me into actually following more foreign cinema. What were the inspirations that Tarantino used as far as the John Woo movies and whatnot, and to be honest, because of him, I picked a career that the chances to succeed are pretty low. So, thank you, Quentin.
I think that's a problem for our generation in general. We were all inspired by Tarantino. Like, holy crap, you can make movies.
Yeah, he was the video clerk that made it. He was the the slacker. That actually took Hollywood by storm. And then it's like, if he could do it, you could do it. Then you realize, you can't. You could, but it takes some serendipitous. Some serendipity definitely comes into play. But I said, I have props for the guy. He changed the outlook as far as I see film, and I love him for it. Regardless of what how low my income is because of it. But it's all right.
Is that it? Is that your film history?
No, I
have a feeling I'm gonna dominate this conversation.
No,
man.
but I gotta mix it up a little bit. I mean, I gotta let you.
Oh, we
go back and forth. I can't be let me talk for
30
minutes and then you talk about 30 minutes. I mean, I don't want to be like we take turns here. That's we gotta. I don't know what I'm doing. Just go ahead, talk about your history.
Well, I don't know if I can break it up. I kind of had a narrative in mind, but anyway.
Oh, que come mierda.
So
A narrative.
I'm that kind of guy, man. I
Ah,
had like this whole. It had an arc and it had a
wanka.
catalyst, and I'm
You
so
bloody
full of shit
wanka.
right now. It's fucking bullshit. It's fucking bullshit. So originally, I actually growing up, I loved horror, and it wasn't I never actually put emphasis on it. I just loved horror films for some reason, specifically vampires. And there's an article I wrote for an old website, which I think is not even online anymore, for Crypticon, which was it was titled something like "The Cheese of Gore," and it was basically speaking about my love for horror, and specifically how I started getting into film, because it's I guess it's not very it's not a very even story, because I started off wanting to do prosthetic effects. The Like the Freddy Kruegers and the gore that you would see in film as a kid fascinated me. And I'll give one of the anecdotes that was in that article. Was there's this day that my mom cooked spaghettis with these giant ass fucking meatballs, and I'm eating my spaghetti, watching a movie, and my mom walks in and she sees what I'm watching, and what I'm what I'm watching is basically this guy. This ship has become sentient for some reason and decided it wants to use a laser to cut a guy's head off from the top of the bottom jaw up. So it slices off the top of his head right as my mom is walking in, and of course the guy doesn't die. He stands up, can still talk, and hunts down people to kill them. I don't remember the title of this film, but my mom sees this and she's like, Are you okay to watch this while you're eating?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and I take a big ass bite out of my meal. Because for me, I always saw gore as it's like an art form, you know. It's an art, and so I originally wanted to go into film doing special effects. Now later, since I had broke parents, I pretty much just let that go at some point. And then the idea of film just kind of dropped off for me for some reason. And I got into comic books, and I was drawing comic books for a while. And again, I would always tell somebody, "Oh my God, this scene would be so great if it was in slow motion. This panel would be so great if it had a certain song behind it." And eventually, I meet this guy in high school. I believe it was my freshman year. And as I'm telling him this, he's like, why don't you just make movies?" And it was huge for me, because for some reason I had this like preconceived notion that movies are made by filmmakers, and filmmakers are a different kind of human. So I can never go there. And when he said that, it was like, holy shit, why am I not making movies? This is like an obvious decision. So I got into it, and then I started discovering movies like Blade Runner, which just blew my mind as far as like cinematography, and the art of film became something that I wanted to really explore. Now, of course, again, this is back before DV, before digital editing, and so I shot I think 2 movies on 8 millimeter film that I edited with an X-Acto knife and crazy glue. I didn't even have a cheap, shitty editing bay. I basically had to eyeball it and cut it with an X-Acto knife. Um, so then after that, I had a video camera, and I shot a bunch of scenes with friends. Nothing that was any good, but I really got into it. And eventually, so just to kind of speed it up, eventually I went to film school. And when I went to film school, I originally went in because I always told myself, if I'm going to spend the money you need for a film education, I'm just going to make a movie and learn myself. And a friend of mine convinced me that going into something technical would probably not be a bad choice as far as education. So I went into digital editing. And the school that I went into immediately was like, okay, there's not enough people signing up for digital editing, so we're throwing everybody in filmmaking. And I got really fucking pissed. And then the dean of that particular school, which was just a tool, he looks at us and he's like, it's true. He looks at us and I'll continue the story. He looks at us and he's like, this is our like orientation, the first day. He looks at us and he's like, I can tell you right now that 99% of you aren't going to make it
just
in a film career, like having
to add to that story. When I got into film school in Miami-Dade College, the first thing they told us before we signed in was like, chances are that you're not, about maybe one of you might make it, if that much. So the chances of actually succeeding in this career are slim to none. So, to be fair, at least the guy was blunt, but he was truthful. I mean, when you're like, when you're like 19, 20, you're thinking, I'll be the one that, makes it through. But, I mean, it's,
of course.
I think it was a fair warning. I'll give him that. I'll give my dean that. You know what I mean? But, yeah, I think also, just to change not to change the subject too much, but both the schools we went into were still kind of like, they had, how do you say, they had the sources, they had the equipment of sorts, but they quite didn't know how to lead to the, lead the way to what you wanted to do. In a lot of ways, my education was very much, you do a little bit of everything, a little bit of writing, a little bit of editing, a little bit of production, a little bit of the business side, but it doesn't really steer you towards like a particular part of the career, which is kind of important for somebody that actually would like to succeed in film, to actually kind of follow through a particular skill set or a particular aspect of the industry. But anyways, I digress.
No, I actually agree with that. I think if you're going to talk film education, I think sure the film history is maybe a little important, but I think there needs to be a more specialized approach. Like, what do you want to do specific? Because when you say film, it's not film. There's hundreds of roles that film falls under. You could be a writer, you could be a director.
Think about the guy who did. I forgot the particular horror movie. I think it was the one with Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman, the Strangers. I think it was. The filmmaker, the director behind that film, was actually had followed a career as an electrician and a gaffer, and then ended up working. I don't know if it was that he made a contact or he managed to convince in his spiel that he could direct that film, but. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there was somebody that actually made a path for himself within this industry with a particular skill set. And I think that once we get a little bit away from the idealized or the romanticism of the career, I kind of wish schools were a little bit more practical about this and kind of like infuse that into a lot of the highly impressionable students that go into film. That it's like, yeah, knowing the history is great. Trust me, it is. Knowing, about, but you also have to think about it as an industry. And if people are investing this much money in school, I think that that's something that needs to kind of be branched out to actually take a film program a lot more seriously than the ones we went to. Even though, to be fair, they both were pretty reasonable for what they were cost and what they actually had at the time.
Well, the thing is also, our audience, I guess, has to realize that we're not as young and
we're like scared straight for film students.
Yes. Well, the thing is, we grew up with the only thing that we had to make films with was really shitty VHS.
My school had some of the old film cameras they used for TV reporting back in the 70s and 80s. That was the equipment some of my school actually had.
Yeah, so did mine, aside from some 16mm cameras. And that's the thing. Our reality was you have to have money to make a movie because you have to buy film and it has to get developed and it has to get cut. And, and now it's insanely easier to make movies. So I can see a college kind of improving film education now that it's so easy to make
that is true, but I do think that even then the programs we went into, like I said, they had a pretty flexible syllabus, which was great, but I also think that they weren't quite prepared to kind of guide the students into particular areas of the cinema. Where you're like, okay, what are your skill sets? You want to go into, work behind the
Right.
scenes, or you want to get into lighting or into cinematography, or because there's plenty of, as you well know, there's plenty of aspects and crafts that you bring into film, and it would be kind of nice to be kind of get to a point where you lean towards one direction or the other. But anyways, that takes a little bit away from what we're trying to get at with this podcast. But yeah, we got all serious. You know what I mean? Like what? I
No, I
know.
think that's fine.
Yeah, but once again, I do want to say that. I do want to say actually I want to say something real quick to any younger audience members that hear us at any point. Um, we were also part of the, we went to school probably like in the late 90s, early 2000s. This was like the dawn of the digital age. I mean, this is where we were still talking, historically we were still talking about how Lars von Trier's dogma movement was
Oh yeah,
so radical, and exactly, and then Spike Lee had done Spike Lee and
Star Wars.
some experimenting too. It wasn't really, this is just right at the cusp of Star Wars episode 1. So cut us some slack.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, so when people say, like, I read all these articles about DPs saying that, I'll never shoot digital. I only shoot on film. Those people are full of shit because they're coming from a mentality, of the era that we were learning film. And yeah, in the era that we were learning film, those CCD chips were crap. They didn't represent color well. The resolution was terrible. The video was interlaced. There was so many issues with it, and like now to say that you don't shoot digital, dude, shut up. Because digital gives you way more information than film does nowadays. So you get a lot more latitude. So to continue with my film history, I went to this college, and in retrospect, I get what the guy was saying. I think he could have worded it better, but I was already pissed that I wasn't learning something technical. I was learning some abstract. And I get out of that orientation, and my future ex-wife and a friend of mine look at me, and they see my face, and their exact simultaneous reaction was, "Oh shit," because they saw how pissed I was about the fact that the thing was merged. But I ended up staying in it for a semester, and all of my teachers, one of them was Bill Moss, the writer of, actually, believe it or not, a Tarantino film, a Tarantino produced film. He wrote Curdled.
Yeah, I know it's just a quick. They managed to kind of segue a little bit of from Dust Till Dawn with the Kelly Lynch reporter, and she was also kind of made a cameo in that film, if I recall.
Yeah, I think so. And it's funny because the first day of class, he's like, "Yes, I work with Tarantino. No, I don't want to talk about Tarantino," which I found really funny. But anyways, he would read my screenplays and he'd be like, "I don't even know why you're in my class. Every time I read one of your screenplays, I'm thinking, why is this not on the silver screen already?" Which was a huge compliment. And all my teachers there were basically telling me I didn't need a film education because I had already, at that point, with my obsessive nature, I guess, I had already taught myself a fair amount through
Mm-hmm.
reading. I had bought, screenplays, and I read the screenplays like Jacob's Ladder and Four Rooms. And I taught myself enough that I knew, I had a fair amount of knowledge as far as what I was doing. So after that first semester, I really didn't see that it was going to give me the education that I wanted. So I took off, and it's funny because after that, I believe it was only like a
Mm-hmm.
year after I left film school, I actually
Mm-hmm.
dropped
Mm-hmm.
wanting to make movies for like 5 years. Remember that period?
Mm-hmm.
It's like I didn't write. I mean, I write pretty consistently, and I didn't write for 5 years. There was no writing whatsoever. And I had just kind of given up, not given up on it. I was trying to live a different life, I guess is what I was going for. But then flash forward, I see it's funny because it's so trivial. I see a video that somebody did after I moved to Seattle. I left Florida. So I see a macro footage video that somebody took of a fly, using a Canon T2i. And I was like, holy crap, you can shoot HD with this camera and it looks that good? So immediately I went out and I bought a Canon T2i. Got into photography and then started getting back into film. I edited The Shun House, which I believe has won, I think, 3 awards at this point. I could be lying about that. And it played throughout the world. And I'm skipping a lot there because I met the director through Crypticon, which I do panels for, and now I'm on the board for. So I edited that video and I started to get back into film, and I picked up writing again, and I started to get back into it, and now I'm on the cusp of being the director of photography for a low budget feature film titled Monsters, which I will mention on the show in the future. I mean, I guess that's a basic gist of my history. It's there was a few gaps in between, but I think once that friend of mine in high school mentioned I should just make movies over doing comic books, it's been movies ever since.
I'm not gonna bash film school entirely. I think that it does, fundamentally give you a lot of structure as far as like just that's film history, but it gives you a basic idea of how productions work. And I think more than anything that it shouldn't. I think that it's more of a craft, or even it could be seen as a trade, that it wouldn't necessarily be so much about like where I get great, the best grades, but how much you really absorb from it. And there's been but going back to my history, I think for me, like
Right.
when I did some short films in film school, and it was a pretty worthwhile experience. It pretty much, if anything, it teaches you that this is what it takes as far as like the way you handle people, that and how do you adjust to some of the challenges that face you, or the realities that face you when you're actually trying to produce something creative or innovative, and how you adjust to it is perhaps the best learning experience that you will get from a film education. For me, I think once I got out of film school, I had gone to my first job was actually at a TV station in New York, and so I was in New York for about a year, and I did a little, tape. I mean, I did some editing. I did, rolling out tape, organizing file, archives, all that sort of thing. Then after that, I came back to Miami, and pretty much have been back ever since. About maybe like around 2006, 2007, my interest with film started like moving towards a more of a critique or an analysis interest. I read some cinema, writing short reviews, and pretty much that was like the precursor to what eventually became Below Balcony to a certain degree.
No, it directly.
But yeah, it kind of was. And then ever since, really directly was, yeah. Pretty much it's what led to what Below Balcony has become, which was writing film reviews. Now moving into podcasts. But yeah, I think for me personally, I see myself more of somebody that appreciates others' talents, and perhaps within that observation is where I find my own art form. Well, I think in the case of Jazz, he definitely is somebody that is definitely a lot more interested in making films. I think in my case, even though I don't close the door into making films, I don't necessarily know if that's something I would completely want to pursue as my full-on career. I would prefer, I guess say it like this, I prefer being Roger Ebert than being Steven Spielberg, so that's
right. And I prefer being Steven Spielberg and having his bank account.
Whose bank account? Steven Spielberg's bank account's sick.
No, I really do. I have a love for film, and it really is my defining passion. Like, I've gotten into game development, and I've gotten into other things in the past, but when it comes to film is definitely...
Well, film is, for me, I think it's the most wonderful art form that has ever existed. I think it's I like the democracy that it offers. I like I like that for an art form that's only been around for more or less 100 years, that it's that important and that it's that revolutionary, and I think it's great. I love everything about it. I love the cinematic experience of going to like a cinema, and it feels it's almost like a very spiritual experience when like all the elements are right, when you have the right audience, when you have like the right film, the right mood going on. Nothing really tops it for me, like as far as an experience to share with strangers or whatnot. I think there's even some ways it's even greater than going to like a concert or or whatnot. So
Right.
anyways, that's pretty much how I feel about film. If it was
Yeah.
it's a very romantic drive, a very emotional one.
Yeah, one of the things that appealed to me as far as film goes when I was younger is I never saw myself doing one thing. Like, I never saw myself being a banker and just being a banker for the rest of my life. I always wanted like a sense of variety. And when it comes to film, like, yes, I can say I want to make film, but that's so many different roles that you can do, because I can be a writer of a film, or I can be the director of a film, or I could be the editor of a film, and so on and so forth. And it's that variety really called my attention, because I'm like, this is a career path, which never became a career or hasn't yet, that can never get stale. You know what I mean? Like, if I direct a couple movies and I get bored of directing, I'll go
Or you can
writing.
become you can also go into producing, which is a completely fascinating role
Sure.
that sometimes we don't give as much credit to, because it's become such a
Yeah.
director driven industry or craft that sometimes you forget that producers perhaps have the bigger say of all.
Well, I'm going to give you my honest opinion. I really never respected producers. And I don't know why I had this, like, draconian approach to not liking producers. But I never did. I never appreciated producers. And now that I'm working with Eric Morgrit on Monsters and I see the job that he's doing, I'm like, holy crap, now I get why you need a producer. Now I get the value that a producer has, because he's really there to facilitate and to make sure that this movie gets done as easily
Well,
as
people
possible.
forget that there was a time where producers were the dream weavers, and that and maybe directors were
Oh yeah,
as obviously an essential element to the complete piece, but I don't think it was really until the 70s, at least in American cinema, where we started seeing the directors as in the forefront of of how movies end up being great or not. Yeah, it was really during that beer generation when we started saying like, wow, like the directors are the ones that call the shots, but sometimes we discredit that there's been a lot of great producers, like Bill Evans, for instance, like his eye towards The Godfather. Like you can say he pretty much was the visionary as far as assembling the whole piece together. And so those are the guys that fight the most for those movies to happen. So they deserve their props.
oh yeah, I agree. And again, especially after seeing the job that Eric is doing, I really have come to appreciate the role a producer has. Until they tell me I can't have something, and then I get mad.
Oh, where do you get those wonderful toys, right?
Which he hasn't done so far.
From the director, or the producer, actually. Well, sometimes they do the dirty work, man.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Steve Barron, who's directing the film, I'm sure he's not thrilled when I tell him he can't do a certain shot.
So, but anyways, I kind of had a pretty interesting anecdote about just to kind of like end this sort of like brief history of Bitter Balcony's brief history of cinema. It's a lot of brief, but I remember as
It's not that brief. It's 34 minutes in.
really, I thought it was 49. Like I'm seeing the clock on your well, actually you were on.
No, you're
So
still.
oh
no.
cool. Well, it's under an hour, so I guess it's not so bad. It's like short film length, so that's something, right?
I'd actually like to say that there's something you've said a couple times that I actually really agree on, and it's the fact that any movie gets made is a miracle, and I agree with that 100% because making movies, the way that I see it, okay, so the way that I see it is making movies is an absolute nightmare. It's a nightmare of decision after decision that could be the worst decision you made. Even then, I still love it, which is why I think that if filmmakers were ever diagnosed with some mental disorder, I would have a hard time arguing that we don't have a mental disorder because only crazy people get into this freaking field. And that's something that I want to expand upon. We'll have an episode. I have an episode planned where we're going to have Kelly Young and Eric Morgret, who made Strange Eons, the movie, on to talk about how difficult it is to make a movie, especially when you're doing a movie of a low budget.
You must be insane. It's insane, like I said before, because there's one thing that you have a particular vision in your head of how things play out, and there is all the other obstacles in reality that actually come into play. Plus, accounting that you actually have to deal, with others. You know what I mean, and how mercurial those situations can be. And I just think it's there is a shred of insanity to anybody that decides to choose that as a career because it's the only way you can cope with it. You know, and because it's difficult. It's difficult, the pressures that come into it.
It is, and there's an article that I read about maybe 2 years ago that said that there are three professions. I don't remember how they worded it, but basically there are three professions that are only inhabited by people with mental health issues. And by mental health, I mean the level of commitment it takes to be good at it. You have to kind of be a little obsessive, maybe, which was dancing, photography, and writing. And I am two of those, which I don't think bodes well for me. But anyways, I understand because there is a level of commitment you have to give to learn the craft, you know, and to learn how to do it well. And like I said, if you were to tell me that filmmakers are all nuts, I really can't argue with you.
Well, no, but I think it's not just besides all that I mentioned, but I think for anybody that thinks that they can have normal hours or like have some semblance of a normal schedule in film, I think you're in for a surprise because it's not quite 9 to 5 or you know what I mean, like your 40-hour shift a week. I mean, it's
not even remotely.
You know what I mean? I think it's like I said, it's a sort of dedication that you make, a commitment that you make that you have to be willing to endure. And I think, don't get me wrong, I think people that get into that industry are more than willing to endure it. But like I said, any semblance you might have of a normal life, like, oh, you know, after I'm done with my shift, I can go and, you know, have, you know, my routine go on. It's not that easy for what I gather.
There is no shift. There's no shift. It's what day am I shooting? And by day, I mean you get up, you go to set, you work the entire freaking day, and then come home, shower, eat, and go to sleep. Only to start up again the next day. There is no shift. It's a day.
And sometimes just a couple hours between you know, taking a break and actually going back to set. I mean, I heard that Peter Jackson, when he was shooting the Lord of the Rings movies, he was shooting like almost 20 hours a day. He would go take a couple hours of sleep and go back into it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's nuts. One of the things that Eric and I discussed early on when we were talking about schedules is he said, you know, he's like, I want to give us at least 8 hours in between shooting days. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, I think you should schedule 8 hours between shooting days because we don't want our actors to just progressively look haggard because they're so freaking tired. It's okay if I look like crap because I'm so damn tired, but I don't want my actors looking like crap.
No, of course.
So that's what filmmaking is. It's, you know, what day am I shooting? It's not what shift do I have. You don't have an AM or a PM shift. You have an AM and PM shift.
No, it just goes on the whole day until and it's also getting used to the whole stop and go. You know what I mean? Like you always have to be ready, but you're not always needed, and that's the one thing that you have to be mentally ready for. That you have to be on your toes, but also note that you have to be you know, be patient until your number's called up.
It's the way that I describe driving in Miami. It's hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait,
Yeah.
hurry up and wait, over and over.
It's been a while since you've been in Miami. Right now, it's just hurry up.
It's just all go.
It's all go, man. It's all go. So
Anyways,
bad analogy, buddy.
No, that's good. So, anyways, I guess that covers roughly our film history, our involvement with film, what we know about film to a degree. I don't think we talked about what we know about film that much, but
We don't know much, so don't worry about it, guys.
we don't know much. We ain't got words to speak the English about film.
That would be like a minute podcast if we actually like were to shred our knowledge of film. It's like press
I
play.
give us a little more credit. I think it's like a minute and 15 seconds, but you know, I'm an optimist.
Yeah, our knowledge would be we pay for a ticket and we sit down and eat popcorn.
Yeah,
Pretty
exactly.
much.
Eat some crappy hot dog, drink some blue icy.
But we got money now, so we could go to these fancy like bistros and order some Blade Runner croquetas or like some, it's true.
That's right. Recently, I did go to a bar not a bar, a movie theater that you can have food and drinks at with my buddy Eli, and yeah, there was a snack called Blade Runner, which I really got a kick out of. I don't know if I had it, but I got a kick out of the fact that it existed.
I've gone with my lady friend. We've got I got to the one here in Miami, Cine Bistro. They have a drink called Pirates of the Caribbean, and it's obviously made with rum or whatnot. It's like a Mai Tai, dude. They just they're just bullshitting you there. But it was pretty cool. It's a pretty potent drink, and it's kind of cool to drink while you're watching movies like The Giver and Lucy. So I think that while we overspend to go see those bad films, it was cool that there was like a bar that you could kind of have more fun with while you're watching a bad movie.
See, I actually had a great time. I watched Guardians of the Galaxy, and it was like a whole lot of fun. Especially after, I don't know, 3-4 rum and cokes.
Well, I don't think I've seen a good movie with I think we saw Godzilla, Lucy, and The Giver, which I think The Giver might have been the best one.
Christ. So can I ask you, do you hate her?
That's
I hate you. I'm gonna make you watch some really shitty films.
I think we just go with what's available to us, so So it hasn't been the most the most fruitful summer for Hollywood. So there were some decent films here and there. I'm not gonna lie. Like Planet of the Apes was good, and Guardians was awesome. Yeah, X-Men was fine. So yeah, but nothing like wow. Like we just gained some gold here. You just have to make do with what you know.
No.
So.
So briefly, let's talk about recent film news. Ernie Hudson has come out saying that he thinks an all-girl Ghostbusters is a terrible idea. Now, I think part of that is fueled by I need work, and I'm not bashing Ernie Hudson in any way, but that article really sounded like no, an all-female cast was bad. You have to have me in it. Please have me in it.
But do you think that was also taken a little bit out of context? Because, okay, the headliner says,
Probably.
I think it's a bad idea that women should be the Ghostbusters, right? But then we actually read the article, well, he's suggesting more that, like, don't really forget, it will kind of suck not to incorporate, the original guys in it, in some fashion or another.
Oh, no. And to be frank, my own personal opinion is, honestly, you should have made a sequel while Harold Ramis was around, and the minute he passed away, they should have just dropped everything with Ghostbusters. Like, that's it. That's it.
I agree. Once he passed away, kind of felt like it felt like a punch to the gut for anybody that really was hoping for a third Ghostbusters film. I think that you kind of needed him. I mean, you needed the original crew to come back to kind of like really give it a go to recapture the magic of the first movie. And I think him being gone kind of was a blow.
Yeah, it was, because the reason why those two movies work, and the reason why those two movies are so great, is because of the chemistry that the cast had. And that's why, like, when Ernie Hudson says, that an all-female cast would be a terrible idea, it may not be a terrible idea, but it's really going to be hard to recreate the chemistry that those people had.
No, I agree. I will say this though. Paul Fink, who was has been reported to be hired to helm the third film. He's had some success with comedy recently. He did The Heat with Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy. He did Bridesmaids with Kristen Wiig and Maya Rudolph, and also Melissa McCarthy was in it. That was a very big success and an extremely funny film. And he's also done some TV comedies, some episodes of The Office, Weeds, Bored to Death. So I do think they have a director that has worked with a particular group of talented female comedians, and they could bring something to the table. I will say this, that it's a must if you're gonna go all female. It's a must that Kristen Wiig has to be cast in that film. I think that she's to be honest, I think she's the best talent that's come out of SNL since Will Ferrell. I think that she's an extremely funny woman, and I think that it kind of starts with her. She's almost kind of like, it's almost like the equivalent of having like Bill Murray in it to a certain degree. Like I think that you have to start with her in the casting process.
Say you're recreating the four characters in that movie. What role would you have her in?
Well, I told you like my initial four would be Alison Brie, Kristen Wiig, Hattie Park. She did Hannibal. She was a character in Hannibal, and I like Amy Sedaris as my wild card. I mean, she's a little bit older than those actresses, but Amy Sedaris is a fantastic physical comedian.
Well, but what role would you give her? Like, if you were doing a 1-to-1,
Oh,
she
I
could
would
be
say
Egon,
Alison
or she
Brie
could
would be. I think
Ray
Alison
or
Brie would be a
whatever.
good Ray. I think that she could be like the smart and kind of
Yeah.
awkward character. I think I think Amy Sedaris could probably be. She will bring something different to the table that probably wasn't quite, you know, as the characters that were in the original film. I think Kristen Wiig could be kind of the too cool for school character like Bill Murray was, but she could also be an interesting Egon inspired character too.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up, because I would like to, if they're gonna do this, I would like to see her as an Egon. I think she'd do a very
I think
interesting.
she could do whatever she wants. To be completely honest, like she has that range.
Sure, but I mean, as far as like taking that talent and putting her in an interesting role, I think she'd do a really great
Yeah,
job.
I think so too. I think they'd be more. To be honest with you, it'd be the bolder choice to go in that direction because you kind of would expect her at this point to kind of be like
Right.
the lead, and it'd be kind of cool to make her kind of like to a certain degree a supporting or a secondary lead. You know what I mean? So I can see that work.
Secondary.
Like I said, I'm not against the all female cast. I just think that it's a little bit hard to go into a Ghostbusters 3 as an audience with a joyous attitude when one of the people that you actually rooted for is dead in real life. You know, that's the thing. It feels like
Yeah, no
there's
shit.
something kind of like it almost feels like an epitaph of sorts, and takes away a little bit of the fun and the luster.
I don't think I ever appreciated Ramus as much until after he passed, because after he passed, it was kind of like, oh man, that's kind of sad. That's a loss, And I didn't really feel that that night that he passed. I think we had a movie night with two of his movies. I I don't know. I don't think I ever really paid attention to him as a director or an actor in any way until after he passed, and then I was like, wow,
Yeah,
that is
it's
kind of a
surprising
loss.
that I think that a lot of people that appreciated him were like, like people that work in the industry or the people that were into comedy, like some of his peers like Bill Murray or Dan Aykroyd, they really said like, look, he deserves as much credit as we do. It's just like he always kind of seemed to be behind the scenes to a certain extent. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, he was never forefront, I guess, enough to
exactly, but
really
you could
stand out.
really say. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he was a co-writer with Aykroyd, right, for Ghostbusters. So he's
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and he was just pivotal for that time. You know what I mean? A lot of those guys from SNL and they came out and doing their own film. And he was in
Oh, even before.
He came from the other, the Canadian comedy show. I can't believe I forgot of it. SCTV. The Canadian SNL. That's like Rick Moranis came from there, and Dave Thomas, Kathy O'Hara came from that class. But yeah,
He wrote Animal House.
he directed Groundhog Day too, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those are the two movies.
Yeah, so yeah, it was a pretty big loss, and it's one of those things like you didn't really feel it until like you go like, wow, like it's a little bit hard to go forward now with that story.
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, as far as Ghostbusters, like I said, it should just die. But he was a loss. Now, speaking of another loss, I guess there was a post today that Elizabeth
Yes,
Peña
unfortunately, only 55 years old, which was kind of a bummer.
Yeah, only 55. Yeah, totally. She's actually in one of my personal favorite films, which is Jacob's Ladder, where she did a great job.
Yeah, I was. I mean, she actually. I was reading a little bit on the article they posted about her death. She had just finished the first season of one of a TV show that El Rey Networks is produced. I think it was Matador. So she was still pretty active and gaining roles and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
well, she
yeah,
was
it's
in
a
Modern
shame.
Family,
I mean,
too.
it's too it's unfortunate. Mostly because 55 is a pretty it's still a pretty early age to go to die. So
yeah, relatively young. The podcast going forward, at least as far as I intend it, is we're not just going to focus on movie reviews. We want to open your eyes and show you what filmmaking is like. And we're planning on inviting directors onto the show and writers onto the show that can talk about their experiences, hopefully, frankly. Their experiences making movies and the nightmare that it is making movies. And and how you have to have mental health issues to be in this industry. That's really, I would really like to take the podcast in that direction where we're kind of, we're critiquing things, but at the same time, we're kind of showing you, like, for instance, we had a meeting with all the cast and mostly crew for Monsters. And so the funny insight that I would share is that it took 10 minutes of us being together for the conversation to break down into a conversation about oral sex, because on a set there apparently is no sexual harassment, and it just gets insane with the conversations that you have. And I've experienced this with photography as well, but it's just funny how quickly you go from which the conversation went, speaking about the state of theater, the current state of theater, and that conversation just leads to a conversation about oral sex, which I complimented the cast for lasting 10 minutes before they got perverted. But it's things like that make the industry interesting, and I think it'd be cool to share.
All paths lead to fellatio.
All roads lead there. Which, by the way, the day I learned the word fellatio was when I watched Flatliners.
Oh wow, Kevin Bacon.
So yeah, when that girl rips into Kevin Bacon, I was like, holy shit! Like I think that little girl could make me cry, like by ripping into me. But then I had to look up fellatio and see what that meant.
I saw Flatliners when I was a kid in the movie theater.
Oh really?
Yeah, I liked it. It's a cool movie. Today's a good day to die, right? Wasn't that like the?
Yeah, that's the opening line.
Yeah. And actually, before we end the podcast, for the most part, most of their sins were very petty. By the way.
Oh, they were ridiculous.
I mean, you made fun of a little girl when you were 8 years old. That's gonna be the thing that gets you to hell. I mean, get the fuck out of here, dude.
Nobody murdered somebody or nothing like that. I pissed off a little girl. I pissed off a little kid. Oh no, actually no, they did kill the kid. Remember?
Well, Kiefer Sutherland was the one that. I mean,
that killed the kid. Yeah.
Yeah, but he, like I said, that I get. But everybody else was just like, really.
Yeah, it was pretty mediocre stuff. But anyways, I feel like this could probably be a good part to end the podcast. So, all right, I'm Jess from Bitter Balcony.
I'm John from Bitter Balcony as well.
Thanks for listening, and if you have any questions, comments, things you'd like us to talk about, feel free to IM, PM, email, whatever, tweet at any of us, and we will take it under consideration.
Heavy consideration.
Thanks for listening.
Who can you call?